Hello and welcome to the Cable Live series. I am Ogechi Ekeanyao. And on the weekends, we talk about the impact of the pandemic in Nigeria. Today, we'll be talking about the impact of COVID on the agricultural sector. As the pandemic continues to have devastating health impacts, countries, including Nigeria, have introduced different forms of lockdown to slow down the spread of the coronavirus disease. And this is having devastating impacts on different sectors of the economy, including agriculture. In fact, it seems like agriculture is one of the worst hit. The pandemic has disrupted demand and supply chains and has really revealed how vulnerable the agricultural sector is. Today we have with us Victoria Madedor, an agribusiness expert and a business development consultant with a focus on agricultural sector. She's currently the Group Head Business Development at the Bank of Industry Investment and Trust Company, which is a subsidiary of the Bank of Industry in Nigeria. She sits as board advisor to several agri businesses and is the initiator of slum inclusion, focused on slum development through agri businesses. She's also the co-initiator of Support for African SMEs, where the focus is on telling African farmer stories. Victoria, thank you for joining us. Hello, Victoria.
Hello, Ogechi. Thank you very much for having me this evening.
Yes, it's good to have you with us. So thank you again. We're hoping that you can shed light on the vulnerability of Agric in Nigeria and how to build its resilience. But first, let's talk about the work that you do with Nigeria, smallholder farmers do to ensuring food security in the country.
Thank you very much. So during this pandemic, like you rightly said, we saw that there was a breakdown in the demand and supply chain, most especially in the supply chain. And for that reason, we decided to tell the African farmer's story, saying that there's a lot of wastage at farm gates, whereas we could see the uprise of the 1 million boys, not just only in Nigeria. We had a lot of boys across Africa that was ravaging homes. In fact, sending them letters to notify them that they're coming to their homes to pick up food from their families. Not because they really want to do it at that point in time, but of course there was no access to food because of the interstate lockdown, which affected the logistic sector in Nigeria. So for that, with the African farmer story, we're shining light and highlighting the importance of including the smallholder farmers and reducing the middlemen. You know, we have multi-layers of middlemen who aggregate at farm gates, then give to the bulk buyers before it gets to Lagos State or whatever states, the urban regions, and it's effectively utilized. So we have more than 7, 8 levels of middlemen. And because of the breakdown and the lockdown, that chain was completely broken. Now, what happens in this kind of situation? What can we do? How can we support them? How can we include them? We started telling their stories so that buyers can have direct access to this smallholder farmers. That is what we have done successfully. Today, we have over 2,000 members in our Telegram community where we interact with them, we share our stories, they share their stories, and we're able to share it across the social media platforms to connect them to users of their produce. Before then, we've always worked with smallholder farmers in terms of trying to provide them with knowledge to bridge the gap between what we have in terms of technology locally and what is the global best practice.
Okay. I mean, since you work with about 2,000 smallholder farmers. What has been the recurring story? What has been the recurring challenge that they faced in this pandemic?
Okay, so from the stories we've heard and from those that have been shared with us, the most important thing we've seen is wastage at farm gates. Now, most people go to farm without connecting with the market first. So by the time their produce is ready, there is a disconnect between the market and themselves. And you know, agri produce, the shelf life is very, very small, very, very short. So when you're not able to get market in good time, you don't have a captive market. What happens is the middlemen downprice you because they know you're desperate. So what they want to do is they'll act on your desperation to get the best price for themselves so that they can make the best of margin. And that over time has driven corporate individuals that want to come into the sector because they do not understand the sector and they're wondering how do these farmers themselves in the rural area are able to survive through this very let me say cannibalistic kind of transactions with the middlemen. But I mean, these rural farmers, they do not have a choice, so they are forced to do what they need to do. When there's scarcity, they up the price. When there's there's demand but excess supply, they just have to crash their price at that point in time. So that's what we saw, most especially during this pandemic. That was the recurring issue in the poultry sector, with the fish sector, aquaculture sector, and across board. Basically, everybody's price had to come down, even though the demand was high in the urban area.
Okay. Okay, but so since this has happened, has there been any support to production systems across value chains towards mitigating this impact?
So let me speak as regards to the support that Bank of Industry has given so far. Okay. They have a specific desk focused on food processing and agro processing, so that we can start adding value to what we produce. Now, why this disconnect really happen is, let me reemphasize, is that most people do not even know that we produce these things locally, these raw materials. And if we don't know we produce them and we import this same raw materials from other countries, it becomes expensive for us to use. But if we understand that these things, the raw materials are here, we just need to cluster them properly and structure it well. Most farmers and most investors can enjoy what we call the anchor borrower scheme. And Bank of Industry is so very intentional about the food sector. And that's why they're insistent that when you're coming to the Bank of Industry, please make sure you're adding value to the local produce so that we stop this farm gate wastage. And at this particular point in time during the pandemic, they've increased their attention to the food sector more than before. It's always been the highest portfolio in the bank, but now they are putting extra attention to it so that we can come out of this foreseen food shortage that we're about to experience.
Okay, so how important is it to promote and to support smallholder farmers, and what kind of support really do they need?
Okay, so one thing we always say is smallholder farmers, smallholder farmers, smallholder farmers. Who are the smallholder farmers? Difference between smallholder farmers and farm hands. And most times, the media have mixed both together. So you go to the farm, you snap the farm hands, and they'll tell you they are the smallholder farmers, right? And it has actually, that definition has actually almost like strangulated the sector, because the picture that is portrayed out there discourages new entrants, because it's one of poverty, debt, strife, hunger, which is not actually the truth. Because if you look at, everybody on earth needs to eat. Without farmers, you cannot survive. What we need, the kind of support we need to give to those in the sector now, is to project them right and tell the truth about what they are doing, and make them understand that we need them. They are the heroes of today. They're the heroes that is making us survive even through this pandemic, because people no longer think of luxury goods. They only think of survivor. You know, there's a lot going on in social media that says 2020 is the year of survivor. It's not the year of competition. It is not the year of who was the best designer fabric, or the best, carrying the best designer bag. Having said that, the kind of supports that we need at the moment, one, we need the logistic to be put right. Logistics is one thing that has affected the sector largely. During the lockdown, we saw that moving from the north to the south, that would normally take a worst case 24 hours. 12 hours, you are down south. Took 72 hours in some cases because of the roadblock. We need the government to understand that this logistics and taxation needs to kind of reduce, so that there's a better flow from one end to the other, from the north to the south, from the south back to the north. Most times these farmers are they're not desperate about funding. They're more interested in markets, access to markets. That's why we're talking about the logistics side. So once we're able to create a proper access to market and reduce the middleman barrier by using a digital marketplace where everyone can log in, even the smallholder farmers or even the farm hands that are not as learned can use simple USSD codes, simple codes to put their goods on the digital marketplace. That will do a whole lot of good, because it will connect everyone together. We need also, the farmers need support in terms of inputs, seeds, fertilizers, not as palliative, but more as availability. We need that availability to be there. We don't need to make a whole lot of jamboree about it. It is a business. It is not agriculture is not a charity work. It is a business in itself and must be treated as such. Over time, we've treated it as a charity organization that you need to hand things over to people. No, they know that they want to do it. Whether you give it to them or not, they will find a way to do it, because they find joy in providing food for humanity, because they know that humanity depends on them. And we need to understand that. Then we need to let them understand that another support, that we need to bring to the fore is value addition. We saw crisis in the poultry sector. We had egg gluts. When there are opportunities like egg powder, if we have policies in place that encourages the production of egg powder, reducing the use of antibiotics, so that the multinationals in the pharmaceutical sector, in the food and beverage sector that use this egg powder can start buying from Nigeria. Instead of us burying millions of eggs, it could have been converted to egg powder for industrial use. The eggshells also can be used in different things. You use it for calcium, which is used by the pharmaceutical. You use it as an ingredient for the decorative industry for paint manufacturing. We saw how the African swine fever wiped out Okiaro. We lost billions of naira there. What support would have helped? A proper extension service. The private sector needs to step into this particular circle using digitalization. We need private extension service. We need more private veterinary services that are focused, that are livestock focused. We need more people in the seed multiplication sector. We need more investment there. Those are the kind of supports we need. In the fresh fruit and vegetable, I've talked about the logistics, but we need most specifically a well-structured cold chain logistics system from end to end so that we can reduce nutrient loss, not just food wastage, but also nutrient loss. There's a whole lot of nutrient loss between the farm gate and the end user. Once we're able to provide those kind of supports and also insurance, we need the insurance sector to step up more so that we can build some form of trust between the farmers and the insurers. Once we're able to do that, the rate at which capital is lost in the sector will be significantly reduced.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that there's the intersection of infrastructural challenges, first of all, and logistics, and then access to markets. I mean, that is posing a huge problem for smallholder farmers. That's one of the things that I can hear you say clearly. Yes. And then you talk about how Agric is not a charity. Yeah, it's not a charity organization, or it shouldn't be looked at as a charity initiative or a charity sector. So, and you talk about investment in this sector. Do you think that the people who should support, or that the government should support, or is it just the private sector kind of investment, or kind of showing interest in the Agric sector? Because if you say then that it's not, if you say that it's not a charity initiative, or we shouldn't look at it as charity, then should the government be involved in this sector?
So, I mean, you cannot do anything without government, because they are the policy formulator and implementers. So we need the government to formulate the right policy. Good thing is the policy for rice ban has helped a whole lot. Just imagine, during this pandemic, the Asian countries refused to sell their rice because they need to survive themselves. So there was no excess to be sold out. If Nigeria had not built that, that sector, that food sector, then we would have had a crisis by now. If we are continuing to depend on the importation of rice, we would have had a crisis by now. So that policy was good and was timely for us, and we're benefiting from it today. So the government cannot, be said to relax, because we need them in terms of policies. But however, as a business in itself, from my perspective, as an individual and as a practitioner myself, I would say that the government should allow private individuals and organizations to run the agri sector. Because government has no business in doing business. They're supposed to implement policies and give the enabling environment that stimulates investment into that sector. Good enough. During the pandemic, the president made a statement and said, we need to start looking inwards. We need to start growing what we are going to eat. The vice president said the same thing. We need to start looking at local resources, using local resources to satisfy ourselves in terms of food, in terms of non-food agro-based products. With those kind of statements and the body language of the presidency, it stimulates investments in the sector. It encourages more investments in the sector by private individuals. So we need the private individuals to overhaul the insurance sector in itself, to bring value addition to the sector, not give handouts. No, we don't need handouts anymore. Handouts have never grown any economy. Let's just look at it in the real sense of it. Who is a rich beggar? Have you ever seen anybody that begs and he's rich, he's wealthy? It's not possible. He will never be self-sufficient because he depends hugely on others for his survival. But if we start thinking, and it also does not allow us to think as individuals, because we know that there's going to be some form of help. So that's why even in the sector, we saw a lot of people, we call them the grant seekers. They just do one small demonstration somewhere, do a huge drone, looking into the farm, you think it's a farm, and they get grants. All those days need to be over so that investors can see the naira and the kobo. This is the net profit I get. This is my return on investment. So I'm investing because I am going to get this much money, this much profit. However, as I'm getting this profit, I'm going to be impacting this number of people in terms of job creation, in terms of improving their livelihood, in terms of knowledge transfer. Those are the kind of investments that we need today. And we also need to look inwards in terms of innovations. We have loads and loads of local innovations that we have discarded because we believe that we need to adopt what is in the West. It is not wrong to look at developed countries, but however, there are local innovations that works perfectly well for us that just needs to be commercialized and scaled up. We need to start looking inwards for that. We need the government to stimulate those kind of innovations to be commercialized. For me, that is what I think would be best in terms of government and private relationship in growing the agricultural sector.
Okay, so I just want to ask you about your opinions or your take on this ban of rice, importation of rice policy. And you say that it has been a blessing for farmers, but there have been criticisms of that policy, including that it has caused smuggling of rice into the country, and then the prices of rice have skyrocketed. It's not like a major producer of rice, but here you are, farmers making a case for this policy. Can you speak more to the reason that you're making this case?
Okay, so nothing good is easy. There must be strive before you get results. So it is okay for people to complain because I mean we have that ban has reduced a whole lot of people's wealth creation avenue, for most especially for those that are importing. There will continue to be smuggling in not just in Nigeria. It just depends on how it is recorded in different countries. It is going to be there. But however, when we become competitive, naturally those smuggling will reduce because the rate at which we price our rice will then be far cheaper than what is being imported. Today, a lot of people eat made in Nigeria rice, regardless of the stone or the burnt pieces that they see. The people that may not be able to eat made in Nigeria rice are the high class and premium people in the country. But for the middle class and the average Nigerian, we are now used to the sweet taste of Nigerian rice. And we have seen that the processing of the rice have begun to improve with time. The destoning machines, they're getting better. And, I mean, they're using a better and more efficient boiling system to process the rice. So there must be pain before gain. So we need to wait it out. However, statistics has also shown that Nigeria has increased in terms of, if you look at the database, we're now the seventh, I think seventh producer, I need to check that, but I think seventh producer of rice in the world. So is that not a good thing? It is absolutely a good thing. A whole lot of people have gone back to farm because they know that there's money in rice production. So you produce the rice, and investors process the rice. Those that have huge capital to start processing plant, they go and process. Those that do not have huge capital, they go into the farming of the rice itself. Others go into the logistics, moving in. So it has created a whole lot of jobs. From my perspective, as an individual, it has created a whole lot of jobs for people, and for me, it is a blessing. The same thing with the border closure. We saw the way it improved the poultry sector in a whole 360 degree. The way it's there was this amazing growth in the sector, because we know that, I mean, people are now consuming poultry products that are local. And one thing to say also, sorry to interject, one thing I need to say is, when we eat what we produce locally, we need to understand that it enables us in terms of traceability. When we can trace where we're eating, the source of our produce, you can then understand if you're eating junk or you're eating healthy. The people that have gone specifically into growing things organically, like going back to the olden days, so it helps with traceability and also improves our health holistically as citizens of Nigeria.
Okay. Are you done with it? Have you wrapped up that particular the question to the answer to that question? Are you done? Can I go on?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. So can you speak to the factors that have historically hindered smallholder farmers in Nigeria from participating in a rewarding market economy?
Well, from my interactions with smallholder farmers, what I see is the 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 way they farm. So we're in small land holding settlements. So if we have a cluster system, one person does not need to own the entire 5,000 hectares. It can be a community of different individuals owning 5 hectares of a 5,000 hectares of land, where you can farm a particular produce, so that there is economies of scale. It becomes more efficient, right? So if you're farming rice in a 5,000 hectares of land, you can use one machinery, one tractor, and spread the cost of production, and then you can have a better timing. And the use of modern technology is more in terms of large-scale farming. So if farmers can aggregate themselves to use a huge parcel of land, dedicate their crop to a particular crop to farm on a huge expanse of land, it will do a whole lot of good in terms of reducing the cost of production. That, for me, is a major challenge. We just need to find a way to sensitize them. And there are a whole lot of organizations that are doing that right now, to sensitize them that they can farm one particular produce and sell it and eat from it. Because for these rural farmers, they farm what they want to eat and sell what is left over.
Okay. So before we move on, we just want to take you back. You mentioned the Okiaro, the swine fever that killed about 145,000 pigs. How do we avert this kind of loss? This magnitude of loss? How do we prevent it from happening again?
Okay, so as at the time I did that write-up, it was 145,000, but as of today is well over 500,000, not just only in Okiaro, but it is spreading across the country. And pigs are still dying. Pigs, it's sad, but pigs are still dying. And capital is being lost. But the painful part is this can be prevented or could have been prevented. Let us not dwell on that, but going forward, what can we do to make sure that we don't suffer such huge loss? First, African swine fever has no cure. Historically, we need to start researching on it because it is African swine fever. It is not American swine fever. It's not Asian swine fever. So we cannot keep waiting for them to give us grants for our research. What affects us? We have to create portfolios that focuses on research that affects us as Nigerians, as Africans. So we need to focus on research for the African swine fever. We also need extension service. In Okiaro, if there was private extension service there, I'm sure they would have been able to tell them that that place needed a huge restructuring when it comes to waste management. There's poor waste management there. And African swine fever dwells and thrive in dirty environments. We need feed millers to invest in Okiaro so that the feed, there's traceability of the feed that each animal is using in that farm. So you will know if the African swine fever is breathing in the feed that is made within the complex. That is a huge complex. So we need investors that will produce feeds focused, dedicated for that settlement in itself. We need to investors for waste management that will come to convert the waste to wealth. There's a whole lot to do with the waste: fertilizer, biogas, and power. The blood. We need someone that will do the collection of the blood when they slaughter, so that we can have blood mills that is used in the feed producing sector. Another thing is we need a proper abattoir in Okiaro itself, so that we kill the pigs are slaughtered there and can be further processed. We import a sizable volume of sausages. We import pork rib. We import some of these things, and it is disheartening. Bacon, ham. We can process these pigs into this byproduct. Now, if we had these things in place, when AFS hit at that time, they could quickly say, you know what, since we are not able to contain this before it spreads wide, let us start processing all this pork in the farm. So those are ways. So we call upon the Lagos State government. The acting commissioner, she's doing a whole lot to see how she can shine lights in that sector, in that settlement, to help them to revive the farm settlement again and get investors to come into the settlement to do what is right to grow the settlement. farmers died when they got to their farm and saw that they lost hundreds of pigs. They died. They fell at the entrance of their pen and were shouting, and they gave up the spirit. There are a lot of people that are still recovering from it. There's in a hospital. It's such a disheartening situation, and I mean the media needs to do a whole lot in helping investors to come into that settlement to help them recover. They're not seeking for grants. They're not seeking, in fact, when we did the interview with them, they kept saying, we're not seeking for grants. We just need help to shore us up again because we can walk and we want to walk.
Okay. So moving forward, after the pandemic, what changes do you think should be made in the agri sector? 1 or 2 sentences, please.
So, well, we don't know where this pandemic is going. I don't like speaking post-pandemic. I'm saying I like to speak today. As we grow today, we need more of the youth in the sector. There's so many opportunities that the youth need to drive. We need their vibrant spirit to drive these opportunities in terms of in terms of research. There's so many things that they need. We need to start doing precision farming, smart farming, tech-driven farming. That is what we need to do today. And above all, we need to start adding value to what we produce locally. Agriculture is a business and must be as one. We cannot be exporting our raw material and importing finished products. We need to look in this.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. It was quite an engaging conversation with you. So we're really happy that you were able to join in. So thank you again.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Okay. So everyone for watching the Cable Live series where we shed light on the effect of the pandemic in Nigeria. Join us again, same time next week.